On this video I'll be giving you a full review of Mysterium Park. We've now got a smaller box, but what is it? An expansion? DLC? A killer? A replacement? Who knows? Well, you will know in about 10 to 20 minutes. Hey everyone, I'm Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple, and if this is your first time tuning into the channel, then this is all about board games and the people who play them. So stick around and I hope you'll check out some more of the content. And if the game I'm reviewing today takes your fancy, then perhaps you'd like to purchase it. In which case, consider going to zatu.co.uk, where if you use my code TBMeeple5, you can get 5% off any limit of board games that you purchase from the site. For those of you not familiar with Mysterium, you can hear my thoughts on my recent Top 100 episode. This is a game I really like, using the mechanic from Dixit with those funky picture cards, kind of something like Tim Burton would come up with in his spare time. Using these cards, you have to deduce a Cluedo-style deduction scenario of who murdered me, the person, the location, and the weapon involved. Everybody works together with a ghost in order to figure this puzzle out, but the ghost can only communicate by picture cards, and the idea is that the ghost is giving everyone visions. So after several years of high praise, we now have Mysterium Park. This is essentially a streamlined, condensed version of the original Mysterium. You still have the same style of mechanics, where players are trying to deduce what person or location they're trying to figure out from a selection of picture cards provided by a ghost player. It's a co-op. Works the same, except the idea is this comes in a smaller box, it has a cheaper price tag, it's got less rounds, it takes shorter time. It's essentially meant to be a standalone, streamlined version. Mysterium Park again teams up a ghost with the various other players. Over the course of 6 rounds, they must each eliminate innocent suspects and locations from the ghost's visions. The idea is that each player will have their own person and location that they need to eliminate. Again, the ghost will provide vision cards, i.e. these huge Dixit tarot-sized cards, to the players in order to help lead them onto their guesses that they need to make. They have 6 rounds in order to find out both the person and the location that they need to eliminate. If they manage to do so, then there is a final round where the ghost will take all the ones that aren't innocent and again provide vision cards to the players in order to lead them on to who was the actual killer and where the murder took place. If the players can't figure this stuff out though in 6 rounds, everybody loses.
You lose! Good day, sir!
So if you're familiar with Mysterium, you've probably gathered that this game is very much the same as the original, but with some tweaks. If you're new to Mysterium though, you're probably wondering, well, should I jump into this one or should I get the other set? Well, this is what this detail review is to help you decide. And first, we'll kick off with duration. In duration, this is where I talk about how long the game is. Does it outstay its welcome? The original Mysterium had a stupid time limit on the box of something like 42 minutes. I don't get why they were so exact with the time. I mean, most publishers can't get it right when they do 30 to 60 minutes, let alone 42. But maybe it was a Hitchhiker's Guide joke. But the idea is that the original usually took between 60 to 90 minutes to finish, rather than 42 minutes if we're being realistic. And a lot of that came down to the setup and takedown being a little bit on the lengthy side, not to mention you had to figure out 3 aspects, not just 2. This one quotes a weird time of 27 minutes on the box, I think, or 28, something like that. And again, why pick such an exact time? But this one is definitely a shorter affair than Mysterium, and a common complaint of the original Mysterium was the fact that it did go on a bit too long for some players. If that was your feeling, then this is just the one for you, because now you've only got 2 rounds in order to get through, 6 turns maximum, and even if you go through all 6 turns and the final bit, the game should not take you more than 45 minutes to play. Less so perhaps if you manage to figure things out in quicker time, or if everybody's familiar with the game so you don't even have to teach it to other players. This is definitely a shorter affair than the previous Mysterium, and one of the key reasons why is not simply the fact that they've taken out 1 round here, it's possibly the best change they've ever made. Remember in Mysterium you had that giant DM screen in front of the ghost? It looked cool, it was a great set piece, but you then had to pick all the locations, characters and weapons for the table for everyone to see, and then find the duplicate cards to slide into your DM screen so you could see which person had what cards. That was cool, it looked cool, But man, did it take a long time to do. You could easily have a massive long setup time just to try and set up that DM screen while trying to search for all these cards, especially if, like me, you've got the 2 expansions of the game, trying to figure out where the other cards are. It was a pain, and when you were putting it away, it was just as bad. Here though, it's been sorted by the use of borrowing a leaf from Codenames book. The ghost only has to look at this tiny little card on the stand, bit like the codename cards, in order to see what players have got what aspects on the table. And in terms of the characters and locations, there's no duplicate card nonsense. You simply just take the deck, shuffle it, deal out 9 cards on the board, and there you go. The little codename thing that the ghost looks at is essentially what tells you who's got what. And there's so many of them, it's ridiculous. But it means that the setup for this game is super fast. Small board, 9 cards, codename bit, we're ready. That's pretty much all you need to do. I can have this game set up and taught in 5 minutes or less, and that is for people who have not played Mysterium before. If you know Mysterium, I can literally teach you the rules in about 60 seconds, just to teach you the new bits, and then we're ready to go. I've got my vision cards, right, get thinking. That shaves off a good 10-15 minutes of setup time and teach already. So if you want Mysterium in a much shorter space of time, then look no further than Mysterium Park. Now we're going on to E for ease of play. How easy is the game to grok for players? Well, this is kind of linked to what I've already been mentioning in duration. It is really simple. You've got a very small rulebook. It clearly explains what you need to do in the rules, and if you've played Mysterium before, then you've already played 95% of this game. In fact, you've probably played more than that because you have less rules here than you do in Mysterium, so there's even less to teach. But even if you found a player who had never heard of Dixit before, has never seen these kinds of art cards before, doesn't really matter. They'll still grok the game pretty straightforward because it's not a difficult game to teach. In fact, you don't even have to teach the whole game when you start off. Just teach the first round. Just say, you've eventually got to figure out a person, a location, and eventually the killer. But for now, concentrate on the people. Here's 9 of them, 1 of them is yours. Here's some vision cards, try and figure it out. You can get up and going pretty quickly, even for someone who is a complete newbie to the whole Dixit art card mechanic. And this, combined with the quick setup and the quick takedown and the shorter playtime, puts Mysterium Park in what is near as makes no difference to filler territory. A typical game will last you that 45-minute mark, and so you are talking a game that you can literally whip out for pretty much any crowd, be it non-gamers or gamers, and they'll be able to play it easily. In fact, for a game cafe, this is even better than the original Mysterium, because the original Mysterium had more rules to grok, but then they also had to figure out, okay, so hang on, this DM screen goes here, and then I've got to find card 3, right, put that down, card 4, card 3A, and stuff like that. And that's not easy for people who are new to this sort of game to pick up just by reading the rulebook. Here though, tiny little card, stand E, 9 cards, right, done. I could literally stick this in the game cafe, leave it on the table, and any group of people that come along and sit down should be able to pick this up and play it within the space of probably 10 minutes. 15 absolute max, and this is assuming they've never seen this mechanic before, have never heard of this game, and simply just sit down at a table and self-teach. It really is that simple. So moving on to T for tactics and strategy, and with Mysterium you had easy, medium and hard difficulty. Always played on medium unless you wanted a challenge for hard, because easy was a complete cakewalk. So with this, you've got no difficulty levels. The book just simply says use 9 cards every time. Here's your little codename thing to see which ones are relevant for how many players you have. Aside from that, there's no other changes. So I was a little bit concerned, thinking, well, hang on a minute, does this mean this is going to be too easy? Am I literally going to be like, oh, well, we'll play it, but just expect to win, we're just here to have a bit of fun. 11 herbs and spices of wrong. This is not easy. In fact, I think this is somewhere between medium and hard for Mysterium levels, because the weird thing they've done with this game, and I suppose credit to the designers, is that when they've put together the characters and the locations for this game, you have a lot of links between them. You look at the characters particularly and you think, oh, I could put the card to say about that. Uh-oh, that one's pretty similar, and you're going to be saying that a lot. Some of them have got colours that, combine on them. Like, oh, there's the purple rose, but he's wearing a purple dress. Oh, she's got a rose in her hand, but there's a flower printed on there. Oh, she's got string and numbers, and so is he with the mechanic. It's like, there's a lot of times a ghost is going to have a heart attack when trying to, do the stress of choosing vision cards. Because believe me, it is not easy, even if you are familiar with the group. But that's a good thing. I want it to be challenging. I don't want it to be a case of simply going, ah, there's a dancer. Oh, well, there's a picture of a dancer. There you go. It's like, no, come on. You got a little bit tougher than that. But this one will certainly keep you guessing. And because you only use 9 cards, it means that there's a lot of red herrings out there, regardless of the number of players. If you've only got, say, 3 or 4 players, then yeah, a lot of those 9 cards are dead choices. But then even if you have the full count of 6 players, then you still have a fair few dead choices, and at the end of the day, you're only looking for 1 card. 8 of them aren't yours. So you've got a lot of room for error, and trust me, I have lost more games of this than I have won. And that's the complete reversal of normal Mysterium. So if you want a challenge with this game, you're gonna get it in droves. But maybe it's just me being rubbish, but to be honest, I can do very well at the original Mysterium, so for this one to be harder, there's gotta be some changes there. But there's a weird little mechanic in this game that I'm not sure why it's in there. I mean, it's not a bad thing that it's in there. I think this is just basically like a catch-up mechanic. It's a witness. One of the selection of the 9 cards you have there is essentially a witness, as they call it, regardless of whether it's the character or the location, which is kind of weird. But the idea is that if you land on that particular character when you're making a choice, then you essentially get to reassign your little crystal ball to a different card. So it's basically like, you're wrong, but have another go. And that's cool. I guess that is basically just to balance out the difficulty in some respects. You got it wrong, but in the same round, you can make another choice. It's cool that it's in there. It's kind of like a major thing. You could ignore it if you really wanted to. Yes, the symbol's on your little card, but if you want to make this hard, you could simply remove the witness. And to be fair, you can tailor this game to your heart's content. Even though it doesn't explicitly say it in the rulebook, you could happily say, well, I only get to use one of these tickets to recycle all my cards. Okay, that made life harder. You could say I don't get to use any of them to make it super hard. But then you could also say, well, in that case, we're not going to use the witness rule. We'll just say it's not in the game. It's not really that distracting on your card to know it's not there. And if you take it out, then the game is a little bit harder. So you can tweak it if you are finding it easy, but I don't think you will. Moving on to A for aesthetics, and again, if you liked the look of Mysterium, you're gonna like the look for this one. The artwork on the Dixit cards is still as good as ever. The characters and the locations have really cool, vibrant artwork, although here, it's more of a dark and gritty style of artwork. There's no bright, well, there's bright colours, but there's no bright, sunshiny settings, you know, we're not talking a sunny day on top of a hill with a nice tree next to it. No, we're talking a fairground at night or at dusk with various dark rooms where you think, okay, is this a fun fair or is this something out of a horror movie? It certainly gives you that kind of look. But everything looks nice. The board, even the codename little cards. I mean, for what little they sort of are in terms of design, they still look nice. The card stock is good, the art is good, the components, what there are of them, like round counters and tickets are good. There's not really anything bad. Moving on to I for Immersion. Are you engaged? Does it get you into that theme? Much like Mysterium? Yeah, it still does. I've heard some people argue that the theme isn't as well represented here. I don't quite get that though. It's Mysterium. It's set in a fairground instead of a mansion. The atmosphere's still there. How can it just be missing from this one just because it's a little bit shorter? What, you need the DM screen to add the theme? Not necessarily. You're still doing the cool stuff with the cards, which is the fundamental point of Mysterium. And you are engaged throughout, even if you are not having to figure out a character. Let's say you've already figured out your character and the other players are still searching theirs. Well, it's a co-op. You discuss stuff. So you're always engaged with the other players looking at their cards thinking, well, have you considered this? Maybe I should try that. You know, and you are always you're not going to be sitting in downtime at any point other than waiting for the ghost to decide on their cards. And granted, it's taken me a while to think of some decent clues as well. You could be sitting around waiting for cards if the ghost is susceptible to analysis paralysis, but then considering how difficult it is to link some of the cards, I can't really blame the ghost, to be honest, you know, whether it's me or someone else. But it's a solid game to get immersed and engaged in, and as a co-op it means that everyone's working together so there's no bad blood. When I say people blame it on the ghost and blame it on the players, that's meant in jest. It's not like anybody's like going, you suck at this game, don't ever play it again. That's never gonna happen.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
And I really like how this box has managed to set itself in the fairground setting and give that theme well. Not from the vision cards, but all the characters and all the locations being set in a fairground keeps it nice and condensed within the fairground. When you looked at the original Mysterium game, you had this big mansion, but then you had like the shed across the bay, you had this random bit in the woods, you know, with like various Blair Witch style markings, you had a lake in the middle of nowhere, you know, so this was quite a broad scope that the original game did you. Here it's nicely condensed in what you would expect to see in a circus fairground. And here's a brain thought for you, hey? What if they did other themes with this? Mysterium Park. It's in a fairground, nicely condensed. This could be a whole series. Imagine Mysterium Camp, where instead of the fairground, you now set it in a typical campsite. Think like Friday the 13th style thing, you know, what was it called? Camp, something like, I can't remember, but you know what I mean. And with that, you could have, you know, the bunkhouses, you could have the kitchens, you could have the lake itself, you could have areas in the woods, you could have the cleaning station, you could have the, you know, the car park, you could have various sporting arenas, you could have the flagpole, and then for people you could have the scouts, the scout leaders, the chef, the cleaners, the chaperones, the people on the water boats, you know, sailing around, you could have all sorts of it, you could have the groundskeeper, there's all sorts of things, you could even have a Jason cosplayer, you could do all sorts with this idea of doing these standalone sets with a unique theme. Mysterium Park, Mysterium Camp, Mysterium School, Mysterium Town Hall, I don't know. So you could come up with a lot of ideas. And if this is what they're planning, then kudos. If it's not what they're planning and this idea sounds good, I want royalties. Because I think this could be a really cool series. And I would love to collect every single one and be able to choose which one do I fancy playing for a particular night. And finally, L for longevity. Is the game going to stand the test of time? Is there enough variety? Well, yes and no. It's got the same thing as the original Mysterium, where you have the 84 vision cards, and that's about it. Mysterium has 2 expansions to add more cards, so the variety has been increased. Here though, you've got the 84 cards, and that's it. Now you do have a good selection of characters and locations though, a lot. Despite the fact you're using 9, there's quite a lot of them in there. So you're going to get a decent amount of variety, and even then, you've got so many of those little codename cards to use in front of you that the combinations are just endless for which ones you might have to pick. But yeah, you are going to rinse and repeat a little bit through those 84 vision cards. Now, one of the big questions people have asked is this backwards compatible with Mysterium? Yes and no again. It depends how fussy you are on your OCD levels. It's vision cards. It's just weird artwork. But some people might get a little bit irked that the backs do not match. The backs on these cards do not match with the original Mysterium. So if you were to mix and match, you would notice the backs are different. And that's going to annoy some of you, and I can understand why. But let's think about this realistically. Does it really make a modicum of difference? Really? It's weird art on cards. Does it matter what the back is? It doesn't matter. Because just because I can see your hand is like, oh, the ghost has got a bunch of Mysterium Park vision cards in her hand. What does that tell me? Diddly squat. Nothing. I don't know what art is on the card. It's not like the art is all themed around circus parks when you use the Mysterium Park's vision cards. Makes no difference. So okay, you might have an OCD thing that the backs don't match and it looks a bit weird, but if you want to use the original cards from Mysterium with Mysterium Park, go right ahead. You want to use the cards from Mysterium Park and Mysterium, go right ahead. In fact, if you just want to pull out your copy of Dixit and use those cards with Mysterium or Mysterium Park, again, go right ahead. It might, you know, tailor the difficulty a little bit by using cards that weren't designed with the set, but you're really not going to notice that with this game. Yes, you might think, well, they designed these 84 art cards with this set in mind, but when you're sitting in that seat as the ghost trying to figure out how to link these cards, you're not really going to notice that someone used these 84 cards with this expansion, because frankly the art is so weird and wonderful that it's all going to be down to what you think of at the time. So yes, you can mix and match all the Dixit art cards with this set as much as you like, but no, it is not 100% backwards compatible if you are worried that seeing the different backs of the cards is really going to get on your nerves. If it does, fair enough, at least you can make that decision yourself. But for me, if I just felt like one night I'm going to mix the cards, I'll do just that. So yes, there's only 84 in this set, but it's a cheap price point. You get 84 cards, and I can always just shove in a new pack. So my final word on Mysterium Park is that we might actually have a killer for Mysterium. And it's its own child! This is about as good as you can get for this mechanic. If you don't like Mysterium, you're not gonna like this. That is, like, come on, that goes without saying. It's the same style of mechanic. You can't love one and hate the other. It's physically impossible for that to happen. But Mysterium was a 9 out of 10 for me. In my 50 to 41 of my top 100, it is such a good game. Love it, 9 out of 10. But this has basically taken Mysterium and fixed the flaws that I had with Mysterium, and there weren't that many, and most of it was due to the length of the game and the setup time. That's pretty much it. This now fixes that. So where do you think this is going? You now have the fun and tense nature of Mysterium with that co-op aspect in a shorter time, with easier rules, with a smaller price point, with a smaller box surface area, so you can now travel with this, with a condensed theme. You've taken one of the best games that uses the picture card mechanic and fixed its flaws. That is, as I said, as good as it gets. Mysterium Park for me gets a distinction level 10 out of 10. If you like Mysterium, you're gonna like this. If you have never played Mysterium, then this is like the perfect entry point. You don't have to get the previous set in order to enjoy this. You can just jump into this and make this the sole Mysterium in your collection. And if they do a series of this, then they can put me down on the list to grab them, because I just think that's a good idea. Camp, park, school, just think of a location and come up with a lot of cards. And then you can mix and match to your heart's content. Okay, you've got that little backwards compatibility issue, but really, only the most OCD of people are going to really care about the backs not matching. It really isn't that big a deal, especially when you've got other games like the original Dixit, if you own that, to basically up the replay value like crazy with the amount of cards it has. But even if that was completely out of your jurisdiction, this game, for its price point, will give you a decent amount of replay value and a decent amount of fun. It's as good as it gets, 10 out of 10. Whew, yeah, Mysterium Park. A really cool game, now with flaws fixed. There's no reason not to grab this if this mechanic is even slightly in your wheelhouse. Now, I hope you've enjoyed the content on the Broken Meeple channel, but I'm not the only reviewer out there putting out videos for your viewing pleasure. You should check out as many channels as you can to get a broad variety of opinions. So why don't you also start with this channel?
Hi everybody, my name is Corey and I'm with the YouTube channel called Talking Cardboard. We are a channel all about board game reviews and playthroughs, but we are a newer up and coming channel that just started less than 2 years ago. So having said that, we don't get a lot of the larger game submissions from larger publishers for review. We do try to bring some of those brand new games to the channel, spending our own money on them, but another facet we like to focus on is actually reaching out to game designers for their designs to bring a review and a playthrough on how to play their games, maybe before they hit Kickstarter, for example, so you don't have to spend your hard-earned money on a game that may not be for you. We also focus on games that have come out within maybe the last 10 years, because there are a lot of fantastic, great, amazing board games that have come out within the last 5 to 10 years that may have been overlooked, or some games that you may have heard of but haven't tried, that we try to bring back to the forefront and show you how great some of these older games can be. Anyway, that's kind of our channel in a nutshell, and we hope to see you visit our channel soon.
So that's it for me on this episode. If you liked what you see and have earned your subscription today, then please click on the avatar in the center of the screen to subscribe and hit the bell for future notifications. Alternatively, you can check out another episode on my top 100, or maybe you'd like to consider my recent review of the Wingspan digital board game. Until next time, remember, it's only a game.